Welcome back, everybody, to Red Zone DFS. We are on the horizon of the 2022-2023 NFL season, and boy, it is good to be back. We have training camps have kicked off. We're about a week into those. Actually, tonight, we have the first preseason game between the Raiders and the Jaguars. So it's time to dig into some fantasy football. It always bugs us when people start a little bit too early, even though there is never too early. But as we saw this week, as we do every single year, there are injuries. Guys go down, unfortunately. So, we try to be a little bit cognizant of that as far as not pushing out content too early. But obviously, the juices start flowing, and we want to start getting content out to you guys as quickly as possible to help with your drafts, start prepping for DFS, and kind of all the above. So with this first video, I'm going to go through here as far as what I see as your top 5 fantasy defenses that you should be targeting this season. So starting at number 5, I have the Green Bay Packers. Last year, they ranked 10th and 11th in terms of yards given up. They ranked 6th in interceptions. Their defense also used their 2 first-round picks on 2 key Georgia Bulldogs, both at linebacker and defensive line. So this team was already a really good defense. They should be vastly improved. I also think the way they're going to end up playing this year, the Packers, is a little bit more throttled back on offense. We saw it. Aaron Rodgers is so good. He knows exactly what he needs to do to win. I have a feeling with their 2 good running backs, with A.J. Dillon and Green on the other side, they're going to be a little bit more conservative, and that should help the defense in terms of being in good game flow, having the lead in games, and hopefully playing in some closer contests. So I think this defense is primed to obviously return and improve. I think their pass rush should be very good. The defensive backs are very solid. I think the Green Bay Packers in that division should have a top 5 defense in terms of fantasy this year, and definitely a team that you should keep your eye on and target in your drafts this season. So in terms of top players for them, Kenny Clark, Preston Smith, Rashawn Gary, Jair Alexander, and Eric Stokes obviously lead the charge. So, I think Packers for me are a top 5 defense this year in fantasy. Moving on, I think the next team, I see a lot of people talking about them as the number 1 defense in the league. I think the division's going to be a little bit improved. So for me, I have them 4th, but obviously we're talking top 5 defense here. They're going to be extremely good, and that's the Buffalo Bills. Last year, they boasted the number 1 pass defense in terms of yardage and touchdowns given up. They were 3rd in interceptions. They have studs at all 3 levels, right? They also added Von Miller to the mix. Von's obviously on the downside of his career, but he's still going to bring a lot to the table. He's going to help that team where they need it, as we saw last year with the Rams. They should be in a lot of favorable game flow situations all year with their offense and scoring a ton of points. Teams having to throw the ball to keep up. So, the Bills absolutely should be a team that you're targeting this year in fantasy football. Tre'Davious White obviously leads, I think, that defense with Micah Hyde, Tremaine Edmonds, Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau. I mentioned Von Miller, but these guys are legit. They're going to be awesome. I do think the division should be a little bit better. Last year they had the Patriots, who wasn't exactly lighting the league on fire in terms of offense. They got to face the Jets, and then the Dolphins, who were just a mess, across the board, obviously early in the season. So that division should be improved a little bit. Miami should have a little bit more firepower, obviously adding Tyreek, a new coach down there. I think New England will be a little bit better, even though we know how they want to play football. And then the Jets can't be nearly as bad, right? So they're going to have a little bit more, of a challenging situation. They're also going to have a really tough schedule outside of the division with where they finished last year. So, I think the Bills will definitely be a top 5 defense, but I have them ranked number 4 right now. Moving on, number 3 I have ranked is the San Diego Chargers. I know this one's going to be a little bit surprising to some folks, but they were a plus defense when it came to the pass specifically last year. Their rush defense was absolutely gashed, top to bottom, every single week it seemed like. But they did add some really key players to help with that. I think their defense now has stars at each level of the defense. They should be forced, to really, again, similar to Buffalo, they should get teams in some very, very favorable game flow situations with that offense. But yeah, I mean, you don't just add Khalil Mack and J.C. Jackson and get worse, right? So they were already a good defense. If guys like Joey Bosa and Kenneth Murray can stay healthy, you've got Asante Samuel coming back. This team is going to be really solid, really strong on defense. I think Khalil Mack will be massive in terms of the rush defense specifically. Him and Bosa on each side of the ball should really put teams in a tough position when it comes to running. And then, again, adding J.C. Jackson to go along with Asante Samuel, Derwin James on the back end. They can match up, even though they're in a really tough division, probably the best division in football, I would say, especially on the offensive side. They've got pieces to match up with those guys. So I do like the Chargers a lot this year. Definitely a team that I'm going to be chasing and trying to get onto my teams this season. Moving on, I have right here, these two were kind of a toss-up for me, not necessarily a 1-2, but, almost like a co-1 for me. I have the 49ers. Look, last year they were ranked 6th in passing yards given up, 7th in rushing yards given up, I believe. They were 5th in total sacks. They bring maybe the best pass rush in the league to the table, and especially how they play, not necessarily just the players, but how they attack. And they believe in terms of their scheme that pass rush basically leads the charge. So they are going to bring heat. We saw last year, DeMeco Ryans, the new defensive coordinator, likes to bring more pressure than Robert Saleh. They have almost everybody returning. So it's a group that knows this defense. They should be even better. They also added Drake Jackson from USC, who's getting rave reviews in camp and should be a great situational pass rusher adding to that situation, as well as Javon Kinlaw coming back healthy, who was a top 15 pick a few years ago. He's back on the defensive line and looking healthy. And then they added Charvarius Ward at corner. So that was their one weak spot on their defense last year, was when they get into facing some of these better teams, they don't really have anyone who can match up with the other team's number one receiver. And if they had multiple guys, it would put them in a really tough situation. So I think now with Ward as well as Mosley at cornerback, you allow this defensive line to get after it and get up the field. They're going to present a lot of problems for teams this year, the 49ers. If they can improve in the turnover category, they have a chance to be the number one fantasy defense in the league for sure. You've got, defenses led by Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Fred Warner, Charvarius Ward, Dre Greenlaw, Jimmy Ward is coming back. So again, this is a returning group of an already good defense that only added to the mix. So I think this team is going to be really freaking good on the defensive side of the ball. And then next, the last team that I have in here as far as in my top 5 to look out for is the New Orleans Saints. Look, they were the 4th best rush defense last year. They tied for 4th in interception category as well, even though they gave up a decent amount of yardage. But the additions of Marcus May and Tyrann Mathieu should really shore up that defensive backfield to go along with Lattimore and Gardner Johnson. So they've got 4 really strong DBs out there. Surely to improve their pass defense. They're in a weaker divisions, outside of Tampa Bay. Atlanta's, obviously got issues, probably one of the worst rosters in the league. Carolina, Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, I don't think are scaring anybody, even though Carolina should be better. But, you return guys like Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport, Demario Davis, and then you add the Honey Badger and Marcus May to the mix with Marshawn Lattimore. I think the Saints are in a really good spot with Dennis Allen taking the helm as far as head coach. He's going to obviously lean on his defense in games to kind of take them to the promised land and win games. As long as famous Jameis doesn't, throw record-setting interceptions like he did a few years ago, I think the Saints are going to bounce back in a big way, and their defense is going to be the one that takes them there. So that's it. Just wanted to do a quick 10-minute hitter here, going over my top 10 defenses to target with fantasy drafts starting to kick off here in the next few weeks. Hope you like it. We have a lot more content coming out, obviously, for fantasy purposes for the football season. We'll be knocking out a top 10 position rankings group videos coming out in podcasts, as well as guys you shouldn't be sleeping on, guys that are kind of under the radar. And then obviously as we approach week 1, we'll start pumping out a lot more DFS specific content for both DraftKings and FanDuel. So if you like our content, give us a thumbs up here, subscribe, give us a comment, a rating. All that is awesome. And hopefully you enjoy I'm sticking with red zone DFS this year.